Greetings, loved ones. Today we're going to talk about trauma triggers and how you can identify them. Help us get these messages out. Please subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit the like button and the notification bell, and please share these messages with others. You could actually save a life. So we have some information, an article written by Mindy Fox, a trauma therapist in California, and she says, what are trauma triggers and how to identify yours? You may be wondering what are trauma triggers. You may have heard about it but aren't clear about what a trigger really means. Trauma is defined as a deeply disturbing and terrifying event that is outside the realm of usual experience. It could be a car accident, a natural disaster, or even a medical procedure. It can also take the form of assault, emotional or physical abuse, or being in combat. And trauma can also come from seeing someone else experience any of these things. So what are trauma triggers? There are many ways that you can re-experience trauma and as a result feel triggered. When something happens that reminds you of a traumatic event, this is called a trigger or being triggered. You might not even be aware of what is happening. You just suddenly react and you find yourself in the middle of something that you don't understand. It is common to not even realize you're being triggered. You suddenly feel so mad, sad, scared, or frustrated, and you just can't figure out why. Something happens in your present day life that reminds you of the trauma and then triggers the same emotions you had during the traumatic event. What happens in the present might make you frustrated at a level 3 out of 10. But the feeling of frustration triggers or reminds your brain of how you felt frustrated during the trauma, and during the trauma you felt the frustration at a level 9 out of 10. And now, because of the trauma trigger, the frustration triggered and now you feel it at a level 9 instead of a level 3. So let's talk about how you can identify your trauma. Here are some examples of what can happen and why. You may be replaying the memory of the traumatic event in your head, and you can't stop thinking about it, and you feel completely consumed by it. This doesn't leave much energy for anything else, and it can cause you to be less tolerant than usual. You may even have nightmares where you re-experience the feelings you had during the trauma. For example, being chased in your nightmare might be so triggering that you wake up and it's hard to go back to sleep. Your nervous system can be highly activated, making you feel hypervigilant or on guard, even when you just run to the grocery store or go out in public. Just leaving the house can trigger you, causing you to feel the world is a dangerous place, and you might startle easily and don't feel safe. Flashbacks. You might also experience flashbacks. This is where you relive the event. For example, you might have been in a terrible car accident. When you get into a car, you start feeling like you are re-experiencing the accident all over again. So this example, the car or driving a car, will be your trigger. You can also get triggered by reactions in your body. These are what's called body memories. For example, you go to the movies and you feel a jolt of fear or excitement during a scene. That feeling in your body triggers you and brings you right back to how you felt during the traumatic event. You're having a flashback and you might need to leave the theater. Some people cannot go to action movies for this very same reason. Body memories can be triggers. Other body reactions to trauma are sweating, panic, racing heartbeat, pain, and muscle tension. Being short of breath and feeling out of control are also feelings that can trigger body memories of a past trauma. When you feel yourself being triggered, it is common to start avoiding places where you might get triggered. You might even feel so unsafe that you no longer want to do the things that you normally enjoy. And it might be difficult to trust people too. Being triggered is so frustrating and it makes you feel out of control, but avoiding life is not a practical solution. It can be very limiting to be avoiding places and people that might cause you to re-experience the trauma. And your nervous system can be so activated that you have a hard time sleeping. You might be reacting to normal life events with more emotion than normal. And it is common to feel anger and anxiety and sadness, and for those feelings to be at the surface more than normal. Going through a trauma can make you feel vulnerable and more sensitive, so your reactions might be heightened. Any little thing can trigger you. If you're frustrated by how someone is driving on the road, you might react with more anger than is necessary. Emotions can be triggers as well. And if you are overreacting, this can be a sign that you are being triggered. It's like your nervous system is on overload. In neuroimaging studies, where the brains of those who experience post-traumatic disorder are compared with brains who have not been exposed to PTSD, we can see that the brain is trying to function, but is having a very hard time. The PTSD brains show that the amygdala is overactive and medial prefrontal part of the brain is underactive. That's a bunch of medical jargon, but that's what's happening in your brain. And sometimes a traumatic event is so stressful that anything, even calling a plumber when the drain clogs or taking out the trash, can feel overwhelming and unsafe. These seemingly simple tasks can be too much for your already overtaxed mind. If a close friend, a loved one, or work colleague is telling you that you seem on edge, they may be noticing that you are being triggered. And you might not be aware of it, so if you are getting this kind of feedback, you might want to start thinking about what trauma triggers are operating in the moment. Healing from your traumas begins as you recognize your trauma triggers. Some things that you can do to cope with being triggered are deep breathing, meditation, yoga, and talking to a trusted friend or loved one. Sharing what you're feeling and not bottling it up inside is really important to healing. And there are several techniques that can help heal your nervous system. But first of all, I want you to don't blame yourself. This is not your fault. Your nervous system has been injured by trauma, and just like you would have to seek treatment if you broke a leg, seeking good trauma treatment is key to recovery. So one of the treatments is neurofeedback therapy. Therapy can help you find out what your trauma triggers are and how to start healing them. One excellent treatment is neurofeedback. This heals the nervous system and helps calm the emotional reactivity that trauma triggers bring on. It can help calm the feelings of fight, flight, or freeze that you feel physically as well. And as you become more resilient and your nervous system calms, sometimes you might feel that you don't need to talk as much as you thought you might have to. And when you do need to talk, it is much easier to process and discuss. So EMDR is another treatment, and this is used for discovering trauma triggers. EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it is an excellent technique for healing trauma. I'm going to explain it a little bit. In this method, you hold an image of a traumatic event in your mind while watching the therapist do a back and forth hand movement. So you're looking at the hand movement while you're thinking about the trauma. I'm just going to display this to you so you can understand. You move your eyes back and forth, and this helps process trauma between the two sides of the brain. Kind of weird, but it works. It is thought that this is what happens during rapid eye movement during REM sleep. The eye movement helps your mind process the events of the day. But traumatic events can't be fully processed during REM sleep, and trauma often disturbs sleep. So EMDR helps the mind desensitize and heal. Therapy also needs to focus on trauma reactions in the body, and this creates a feeling of fight or flight. You can also feel frozen in place or trapped. So another program called Somatic Experiencing helps you process these body memories and finally complete the escape so you feel safe again. The question is not if you will encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is, what will you do when you do encounter them? You could be the person who saves a life. You are called. We are all called to be champions for justice. If you're a victim of violence, listen to me. You've been told lies for so long, I want to tell you the truth. And the truth is, you are valued, you are loved, you're intelligent, and you are worthy. God does not want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence in peace and tranquility. There is a way out. It's not your fault. Abuse is not love. And most of all, you're not alone. If you're a victim of violence, reach out to someone today. If you find yourself in a dangerous situation, call 911 for help. And if you know of someone suffering violence, tell the authorities. In our next episode, we will talk about identifying these triggers and how to overcome them.